Today, my guest is Gail Schilling. And Gail is in Concord, New Hampshire, where she lives now. Just a little bit about her. She is a divorced mother of 4 children. And she, like me, is a writer, but a columnist also, and was a teacher. She teaches writing and has taught writing. And she's had a very long and fruitful career. She began writing in Wyoming, which is very interesting because that's where she brought up her children. And living on, and I love this, she has wonderful witticisms in her book called Living on Hope and Antelope. So she probably should explain that to us. Anyway, she wrote and has won all sorts of awards for her writing for Rocky Mountain newspapers. And she has also since then been doing articles and features in various magazines across the United States. So she's with us today, though, to talk about her book called, and this title really intrigued me, Do Not Go Gentle, Go to Paris, and then the subline, Travels of an Uncertain Woman of a Certain Age. So with that title, of course, I was completely intrigued and I had to read her book. And then once I'd read it, I decided I had to talk to her more. So I'm so thrilled to have her today with us to showcase Gail. So good morning, Gail. How are you? And you are indeed in Concord, New Hampshire. I hope I got that right.
I certainly am.
Good. And everything well with you and your family?
Yes. We even have 14 new baby chicks. We have a little bit of everything. Yes.
Baby chicks?
Baby chicks. Yes. So we love life. And my daughter and her husband during COVID lockdown said, why not? Let's hatch eggs. So that's what we're doing.
Oh my God, real chicks. Oh,
and I'll point out that I am not Robin Siegerman, but
yes.
I'm all thumbs when it comes to computers. And part of my journey has been solving problems as I go. And so I threw this one in Diana's lap, and we haven't resolved it yet. So I'm really Gail Schilling.
Yeah, and Gail Schilling, you absolutely are. But Robin will be joining us a little bit later, so that's a bit of a surprise. Anyway, Gail and I have talked a lot about how we would do this seminar just to make it as interesting as possible as we could. So I'm just going to sort of tell Gail a little bit about your trip, and then we're going to put up a map so people can see exactly where you went. So Gail waited more than 40 years, believe it or not, to take this trip to Paris and other parts of France, where she ended up spending a whole month in the month of May, which was very smart because the weather's better there at that time. And we're going to talk to her about what happened and why she went. But I thought it would be helpful if I really did just put up a map to show you that we kind of figured out she could show us, exactly what the trajectory was and why she decided to do those places. Whoops, that's not the right one. Hold on, we're going to get, there we go. And here we are. All right, and I'll just make this a little bit bigger so that we can all see it. Okay, one more thing. There we go. Now, go back. There we are. All right, I hope everybody can see that. And we should just add that, Gail did not do this trip with a lot of money. As she said, that another witticism that she had is that she rubbed the buffalo off the nickel in her budget. So Gail, start us. We're going to look at pictures of your trip in a minute, but just tell us, you started out in Paris, right? And then tell us where you went, and we'll follow this map that we've got here, just so people know how much you did in that month.
Well, my son decided that I should take this trip, and I talk about that in the book. But the first thing I had to do was to get past Iceland, because this was the year that the volcano erupted.
Oh my goodness.
I was never sure that I'd make it at all, but I flew into Paris, and let's see, I stayed at a B&B with a very animated woman. And then I went up to Lille, which was really not on my itinerary, but it was the best place to meet my friends from East Anglia that I had known in Wyoming. We hadn't seen each other for 20 years.
Oh, wow.
So Lille is the connection with the Channel, and my friends could easily get across, I shouldn't say across, they could go under the channel, the English Channel, by taking that way. So we met in Lille, and of course everything goes wrong. You have an itinerary, and then they were detained by about 4 hours, so I had to amuse myself in Lille, which I did. And then from Lille I went back to Paris and on to Chartres. From Chartres I had planned to go to Chartres is right outside of Paris, and then I had planned to go to Mont Saint-Michel,
Okay.
and then found out that I couldn't get there from here. So I ended up going to Saint-Malo, which worked out nicely because it was another area of France that I hadn't really planned on seeing. And it's also the site of the beautiful novel, All the Light We Cannot See. So now I have a
Mhm.
visual of that
Very good book
beautiful
also.
book.
Yeah. And
And
listen, I'll just interrupt you for a second. Sorry to, I'm telling people, keep a little notepad beside you and write down some of the names that we're going to be talking about, because for the two giveaways, we're going to be giving away a paperback and the new audiobook of Gail's book. And we're going to use some of the names as sort of leverage. So just pointing that out. Okay. From Saint Malo, tell me, keep going there.
from Saint-Malo, I was able to travel to Mont Saint-Michel, and I met a wonderful little lady on the bus. Meeting these ladies is just one of the most wonderful parts of the trip, and seeing how they've embraced aging. From Mont Saint-Michel, and again, I ended up there a day late. I wasn't sure I still had a reservation. From there, I went down to Chateau Country, which is Amboise. And once I got there, I decided I'd change my itinerary again, and I didn't want to be on buses anymore. So I just hunkered down in my little two-star hotel. A lot of the hotels that I went to were just 2 stars. And I thought they would be flea bags, but my friend, Professor Tapscott, who loaned me his place, and I'll tell you about that in a minute, said, oh, no, no. He said 2 star just means you have basic accommodations. It can be very, very clean, very nice, but you won't have a swimming pool. You won't have a coffee service. You won't have all those fancy things that we campers can live without. So I found a little 2 star and snuggled in there. Then from Amboise, I was headed toward down the bottom here by the Mediterranean, where it says Toulouse and Saint-Sac.
Well, how long a
Saint-Denis.
trip was that, by the way? That
Oh
looks
my
like a
gosh,
really long stretch.
that was about 11 hours by
Oh,
train, and that
wow.
was the hardest slog. And that's when you start to lose altitude. You think, I'm tired. This really isn't fun anymore. I'm hot, because the weather up north is very cool.
Mhm.
And then as you get toward the south in the Mediterranean and Spain, of course, it heats up by about 20 degrees. Um, so I came down through Toulouse and had to, again, change my plans because I couldn't pick up my car in Carcassonne to drive to the professor's place. So that required another stay I hadn't planned on. And again, these are the early days. This was 11 years ago. I couldn't just get on my cell phone and find a place. I had to find an internet cafe. Then I had to figure out the keyboard. Then I had to try to find something. So it was a little more labor intensive than nowadays.
Mhm.
And then I got to the place of my dreams in Collioure, which was, oh, I didn't talk about Saint-Denis. I did
Okay.
make it to the professor's house. I had to
That's right
drive
in
a
there. It
train.
was too small for me to put in there, but it was a little town between these two,
It's a
Carcassonne and
little
Isaac.
town
Yeah.
near the Pyrenees.
Mhm.
Only about 450 people live there, and he offered me his place. Of course, he wouldn't be there. So I had to figure out first which place it was and make sure I was going into the right house and not somebody else's house. So a lot of uncertainties. And, as you lick off each one, you become a much more, you don't realize it at the time, but you're becoming much more confident about being able to problem solve. And that was a huge thing.
Yeah, well, you
Yeah.
were very resourceful in the book. We'll talk about that in a minute.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then down to Collioure.
Yes.
Collioure. Now, the itinerary was Collioure. I was supposed to keep going over toward Monaco and
Mhm.
Nice, and then on to
That's
Corsica to do writing at a monastery. I
it.
had I had the ferry paid for. I had the monastery deposit,
My
and
dream.
then I didn't get there. So you'll have to find out why that happened.
You
And I
did.
thought, I'm pretty happy right here in Collioure. So instead of 2 days, I stayed 9, and it was wonderful. After I had enough, and had enough in the sense of I felt satisfied, totally satisfied with the visit. Then I headed back to Paris, had a few more adventures there, and then flew home. But that was the plan. And of
Yeah.
course, it went astray on several occasions.
Well, and you see that France is not that big a country, but you really crossed it and did a lot because you would have seen a lot too in your travels.
Yes, it's about
Um,
the size of Texas,
yeah,
so it's pretty good size.
but it changes so much, doesn't it? I mean, it's
Hmm.
not like Texas. There's so much diversity in terms of what happens through here. It's like they say, all the chateaus in here. Did you see a few chateaus on your thing? We're going to
Yes,
look
I
at that.
did.
Yeah.
Actually, there was one right across the Loire from where I was staying. So
Wow.
I thought this works for me. And then I did visit, but we'll talk about that when we get there.
Okay.
Um,
All right. So, well, let's get to the heart of the matter actually, and ask you like why this trip and why did it take you so long to do it?
why did it take me so long? I think I was a nervous Nelly in some ways. I didn't have the money. Then I had four children,
Yeah.
and then Daddy-O left, so I had four children. So I just never I
Wow.
had the money or the time at the same time. So then when I finally thought, now I have a job that will let me, I was an adjunct instructor, so it wasn't big
Mm.
money. It was
Hmm.
just enough to live on. I thought I can do this. And then my job was changed at work because I was older. I did not have the same qualifications as the younger professor who didn't have my experience. I had 15 years of experience and I was still riffed. So my son was just absolutely apoplectic. This is my son, Tom, for those of you
Hmm.
who know him. And he said, you're going. So
Good.
long story short, I went and kept a journal on the way.
Wow. And why did you go alone?
Oh, I'm used to doing everything alone.
Yeah.
You know, spending those years in Wyoming and growing up out in the country, I'm a solitary sort of person a lot of the time. I'm
Mm.
social when I can find it, but I'm very comfortable navigating on my own. And I've read books of other women travelers in
Mm.
France or anywhere, and they just don't like eating out alone. And I don't mind. I have a book. I'm my own best friend, I guess.
Yeah, well, I find that eating out in France is probably one of the best countries in the world to do it. Is there's so many women that
Hmm.
eat on their own. So you're right, you're more comfortable there almost, right?
Hmm.
Yeah. So and what did you hope to achieve from the trip? Was it really just because you hadn't done it and you always wanted to go there? What was it about?
Well, I think I was trying to figure out how to grow old. At first, I thought I'd set up a pilgrimage, but my faith journey has been had a lot of twists and turns in it as well as this itinerary. And at that point, I thought the shrines and sites that would have been very holy to me became special in different ways. So I decided against a religious pilgrimage, but I thought this is more of a pilgrimage to my elder self. I just need to know that I can do this because I came very close to canceling the whole deal. But I had told people I was going to go and they believed me because
Hmm.
apparently um, that's how I act.
Yeah.
And I couldn't let my son down. I couldn't let him down.
Yeah. But I just want to add too, because a lot of people our age, when they do a trip like that, they would spend a lot of money staying in the best hotels and that kind of thing, right? Which is a
Yes.
very different experience. That's what I love about your book is that when you write about you're almost like a backpacker, but you're a
Oh,
woman of a certain age, right?
right. But
But you have different experiences because you are the age you are, which I found fascinating.
I didn't travel with a group. In later
Yeah,
years, I've traveled
that's
with
true.
one other person, but I don't go for the groupie thing. And I knew not to wear the backpack and look like a tourist. And that's why the scarves became very important. So did,
I'm big
um,
on that too. So.
yeah, no, it was more of a camping experience. And then I think, maybe I was living out part of my dream of once upon a time, I thought I'd join the Peace Corps. So, it was that sort of
Yes, you're like
adventurous
that.
spirit.
And
Mhm.
by squeezing the buffalo off the nickel, did you have enough money, did you think, to do what you wanted to do? Or were you always feeling like, I'm not sure when you
No,
were
I
there?
had enough to do what I
Okay.
wanted to do. I had a nice credit card and I thought it'll use half of it. So the whole trip, not the airfare, but the whole trip cost about $2,000 for a month, which is really,
What?
yes, yes.
We're talking
Um,
what though, 2010, right?
yeah,
You said?
but at that time, a
Mm,
dollar was a dollar
yeah,
40 was a
that's true.
euro. It
Right.
was the euro, the dollar was not strong.
Yeah.
So no, I kept it down. Might have been 2,500, but I
Wow.
was cheap.
That's
I
incredible.
found all the cheap things.
Yeah. Well, and you did very well. I was very impressed with that too. So let's go and show some pictures here again. Let me just do the presenter view for us here. So just so people know that this is what the book looks like that we're going to be giving away. And I do love that. So, and then this is you at the beginning of the trip, right? Where were you when you took
This
the picture?
this my son took this at Logan Airport, and I said this was the before, and I only asked you to put it in because the after looks so much better.
Well, we do that at the end, right? So
Oh
yeah, you look
gosh,
like you're ready for a vacation though.
I
Let
think
me
I
put it
needed
that
a
way.
vacation.
Okay, so whoops, we went too far there. Okay. All right. So when we were talking about going to north of Paris and then west of Paris. So
Mhm.
Lille, I've never been to Lille, but it really is a beautiful city. Does it really look like this?
Yes, it's very Flemish, and I think you could just
Mhm.
spend days looking at the different doors. The architecture um, has more of a Flemish influence. It's so close to Belgium. You feel
Mhm.
that influence as well.
Like
So
Strasbourg. Yeah.
it's not Paris,
Mhm.
but it was where I met my old friends, and we had a lovely reunion. Um,
And then
part of it is an industrial town, and but I didn't go to that part until I was trying to find the hotel, and then it was a little bit less old-fashioned and elegant. But but my other friend knew where to find the budget hotel. She'd been in the tourist business,
fantastic.
so
But
she
the
was able to
architecture
help that.
definitely is much more
Hmm.
German or it really is very interesting. And then Mont Saint-Michel, again, my dream to go there. It's this little island that's just jutting out. And sometimes the tide is up and sometimes the tide is down, right? How does that?
Yes,
Hmm.
yes, and apparently you can be stranded. The legend is that the tides can go as fast as a horse can gallop. So they move in very, very quickly. They move out very, very quickly.
Really?
And I found this, and again, after Lille and my friends left to go back to England, I lost my camera. I left it in their car. So I didn't have any photographs of my own to show for Mont Saint-Michel. And I had to remember it. So right then it became less of a recording of what I'm seeing as what am I feeling, and to see, a lot of the iconoclast damage when
Mm,
soldiers would come in and break faces off statuary.
really?
But to be up that high with so much sky and sea, it was a beautiful experience.
And
It
did
was
you
very
walk all the
beautiful.
way up there, Gail?
Oh yes,
You
yeah,
have to walk it, right?
Yeah, I
That's what I
walked all the
understand.
way out.
Wow.
I did a lot. I did a lot of walking, but it's really quite magical. You wonder how
Yeah.
people could have built that.
Yeah. And then I like the whole tide thing. So you have to actually go across at a certain time then to
Well,
get
now
there?
there's a causeway, but back in the
Okay.
day, you had to run. So there's a woman out there who still makes, or her, I think it's I've forgotten her name, but she makes omelets because you can make them very quickly so that when the pilgrims came, they could eat an omelet and then eat and run home before the tide came in and washed them away.
I love it. I knew there had to be some story like that. So
Oh,
that's
yes.
great. Okay. Here we go. So this is Amboise. So now we're down in the Loire Valley, right?
Now we're down in Amboise, and
Hmm.
this was my little hotel was way over to the right, and there's the chateau that I did look at, and then up above the red brick is
Yeah,
the last home, Chateau de Clos Lucé, was where Leonardo spent his last days,
that's
and
right.
has
Yeah.
so many of his inventions, so many of his sayings, so much of his artistry with plant life. Very beautiful. But I have to point out one thing, crossing this bridge, and I tend to talk to people if they look safe, and I saw two fellows and we were talking about the river and oh, where do you come from? And I said, Wyoming. They said, really? And I told them I had lived in Lander, Wyoming, and they said, no kidding, we've been there. So who could
What
imagine? And
I
it's
know
just a
happens, doesn't
town.
it? Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
and we should also point out that the tomb of Leonardo da Vinci is in this chateau, which is
Hmm.
the Chateau d'Amboise. So he lived here, but he's buried here, which is interesting. Yeah. It looks like a beautiful place. I've got to go. Okay. Now we're going down. This is the after the 20-hour, 22-hour train ride or
Oh,
whatever it
this
is.
is a
You're way down. But isn't this
long.
gorgeous there, huh?
Yes,
The
it
Pyrenees.
is. Carcassonne, the name refers to the sound that the clatter that you'd make to scare the enemies away. At least that's one of
Oh,
the
that's right.
legends that's grown up.
Yeah.
Carcassonne, now this happens about by the time I get to 10 days, 12 days into a trip, if I'm traveling alone, I need to regroup. I need to just not be stimulated anymore. So
Oh, I
Carcassonne
understand.
was starting to feel that Latin vibe. We're very close. We're 15 miles from Spain or so, not very far away. And I'm starting to get on overload. And I had to get a hotel that was not, well, it was a 2-star. It was clean. It was safe, but it was not very attractive. This was probably one of the low points. And then I had to get the car. And I know I was so anxious about driving a car in France. So I did tour the
There
ramparts. Oh yes, there's my car.
I can't believe that you got this car from a rental. So this was like a blue or turquoise car with a it looks like a convertible.
Yeah, it's a convertible. Yeah, the only reason it's a convertible was that I was trying to open the trunk. I couldn't pop the trunk and the roof went back. So
oh, you're kidding.
I never did open the trunk. I just put my suitcase inside and thought,
oh my goodness,
this is it. So,
and how was driving? Because I know a lot of us, especially women, you know, we're nervous about driving in France or in Europe.
Well, even my son has been all over the world. And he said, Mom, he was really apprehensive. But the professor whose place I'm staying at said, oh, don't worry about it. It wasn't bad. It really wasn't bad.
Yeah.
No, but this was a Sunday afternoon. And
good.
Sunday afternoon, I think, is a lot less hectic than maybe a work day. But no, I managed. The hardest thing was probably learning the gears and reading all the buttons and figuring out where things were.
So, and it is a Citroen, right? We can't see
it is a Citroen.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. It's a great.
My favorite color. So
me too.
That works out.
And this is all in the same area. This is an area I have never been to, so I was fascinated by this.
Okay, this is the Montagne Noire, and it is kind of you can see the Pyrenees. So the way over in the back, I don't know if you can see what I'm doing, behind me, that's the Pyrenees. And this is the old Cathar country. So this is where a lot of those early those early Christians that had such a rigid lifestyle lived, and ultimately they were wiped out. But I went to say Sac because I had a car and I needed food. So I had bought some food on the side of the road from a vendor who pointed me back in the right direction. I had gone the wrong way anyway. And I found a little grocery. First, I asked around this village of 454 people. And my French was adequate for that. And they said, no, they kept saying camion, camion. And I thought, so apparently a truck comes through every once in a while, but I didn't take advantage of that. I went to a little tiny store and talked to the proprietor. I was the only one there, and he helped me pick cheese. He helped me and taught me about the wine. And then I had a little meal for when the professor showed up. He was going to arrive. So I arrived one day and then he arrived the following afternoon because he teaches.
This was when you were staying with your son's professor and
my son's professor. So he is very generous and offers his place. He said Tom said, can my sad mom stay at your house? And he said yes. So
not so sad.
No, he is professor. He teaches poetry at MIT.
Oh, wow.
And he's now he has translated all of Neruda's love sonnets from the Spanish into English. He's quite something. So he said, oh, sure, take my house. And he sent me the key and I let myself in and then waited for him to come. And then I departed the next day. But
we will point out that this was not his house here.
No, this is not his house. He has a much tinier house. Yes.
And here, this is where you're going even further south and towards the Mediterranean now. Look at that view of the Pyrenees. Eh? Isn't that incredible?
This is Collioure Bay, and those are the Pyrenees in the background. But it's a little bit like the Maritimes in Monaco and Nice and California, where Route 1, the mountains just tumble right down to the sea, and it's just beautiful. No, I did not go hiking. That's one thing I probably wouldn't do alone. Not so much for people. I don't like snakes overly well, so I probably would not do that. But yes, that's the Pyrenees.
Okay, so let's talk, because you spent 9 days here.
I spent 9 days in
Collioure.
Yes.
Beautiful. Wow.
So this was actually, the vista from here is about what I saw from my hotel.
I think I have.
And again, I lucked out. Oops. I lucked out.
Yeah, go back. Yeah, because I've got some pictures from your room, but there's
Okay.
2 pictures before
Yeah, I lucked out. So you can see in the center of the photo, there's a tall bell tower. This is Our Lady of the Angels. And this bell tower has been around for several hundred years. And again, it was used for sound so that fishermen could find their way back. I don't know if there was actually a lighthouse. I know there's a little light on the end of this jetty over on the right.
Yeah.
But this walkway, I would walk down the hill and then around and over along this walkway where you see the green trees.
Right over here. Yeah.
And then I could go back into the village, and that's where I found my internet cafe.
Yeah. And a whole bunch of other things too. Look at the market day.
Yes, this is market day. And the bread was wonderful. The bread with the olives was really good. And of course they had a little jazz combo playing.
Yeah, we're coming to that. Look, this is, I know, we should point out, these are your pictures too that you took. These are mine.
And this was crazy. So
what is a rambling band?
Well, a rambling band, so it's kind of a jazz band that just walks around town. So they're not in formation. They just kind of wear these bizarre outfits. I think all of them are from the UK. And
really? Okay.
Yep. I think they dress up, they choose a color. Now, some of the rambling bands were a little less colorful. They wore white pants and black tops, or maybe all white, and they just wander. But they're very thoughtful of each other. They don't play in each other's space. But
is the music good?
Oh, yes.
It's really good music?
Yeah, it was really funky.
Yeah, okay.
It was funky, and it would bounce off the walls. So there were a couple of choice places where they could get into the alleyways, or where there was a courtyard and have the music just bounce off the walls. And of course it would go across the water. In the book, I talk about hearing Star Wars that they were playing on the edge of the bay, and it would come across, the water would amplify it. So it was, and they didn't want money. They were just having a good time. Yes, this photo was sent to me by somebody that I've just met. She read my book. She's living in Perpignan, which is right up the coast. And she comes from Maine, which is right up the coast.
And I think she's online with us today. So I think
cool.
That's why I gave her a credit here, because Ava, this is a beautiful picture if you're out there.
Oh, she does beautiful.
Gorgeous. And her photography is out of this world. So
yes,
I just want to include that to make sure people know that that's her photo. Look at that.
Yes.
It's beautiful.
But this is a citadel. I didn't actually go in it. I kept waiting to go in a different day, and then I didn't go. But so I guess I'll have to go back. But the lines you see by the people and the woman in the blue coat, artists would drop their paintings there and maybe try to sell them, or they'd paint.
Wow.
But it was just a wonderful place. And I went there because in my Rick Steves guidebook, it just said, I don't know why this place isn't overrun. This best kept secret. So.
Well, it may not be now after you've told us, though.
Maybe not.
And then, Robin's getting there for us. We'll be back to her in a minute, Robin. So I just wanted to show kind of some of the places that you stayed, because you stayed in a bed and breakfast. This was a hostel that you stayed in. And this one, you can't really see it all that well, but there are bunk beds, which meant that you were sleeping with more than one person in the room, which would always be weird for me. But how was that?
Oh, that was cool.
Yeah.
So this is the MIJE, the Maison Internationale Jeunesse Étudiante.
Exactly.
Right. Yeah. And I think I was on the top floor. So
I think you're looking right at this.
Yes, I'm looking at the stained glass of Saint Gervais Church, and you can see it right out the window here. So I brought a couple things to show why I feel secure. So I always travel. I don't know if they can see this.
I always hold it up real high there. Higher. Can you hold it up a little higher?
Yep.
Okay, what was that? Oh, is that
That's a
your,
money belt.
okay. Wow.
Okay. And
Yeah.
that's where you keep your passport, your
Uh-huh.
tickets, and your credit cards when you're sleeping.
Yeah. Having been robbed, that's a good idea. Yes, I
Oh,
know.
and then this little gizmo is something that you can wear. When I told my friend I hadn't gone swimming at Collioure, she was so horrified. So she bought me this, and this is waterproof, and you can put all that business in there.
Wow.
The other thing that's helpful is a towel. Looks like a towel, but they're microfiber towels that dry very, very fast. So that if you don't have linens, and again, check with the hostel, if you don't have linens with your room, you can bring your own towel and dry it and pack it, and you won't get everything soggy wet.
Sounds like an ebook you should put together for
And
this.
then another thing, one last thing that I find very helpful is either bring duct tape or moleskin. This is sort of the soft stuff that's sticky. And if your toe starts to get a blister because you want to look fashionable when you really should be wearing something else, then you can just cut up a piece of moleskin and stick it on your toe or your blister. And
Oh, that's a really good idea.
yes.
So this, I just want to show, this is the view from Collioure. Like this was, it was a 2-star hotel, but you got a good room, right?
It was just a 2. It might have been a 3 because they had a restaurant. And I had I had a lavabo, which means that you have a sink in the room,
Yeah.
and you have a bed. But I was lying on the bed, and the doors open onto the rampart. So a few people would go across in front of me, and I didn't mind. If I needed privacy, I shut the barn doors on the outside and then my French doors on the inside, and I was really tucked in.
Wow.
But when the tramontane blew, when the wind blew.
Yeah, that's like the Mistral, just for people that
Yes.
don't know. It's it happens in the south of France, and it can be 3 or 4 days of sunshine, but absolutely ridiculous hurricane winds, right?
Oh, the hurricane wind with all those doors shut, it rattled the coat hangers on my coat rack. It rattled them.
My goodness.
But when I figured out that I couldn't get to Corsica or Nice or Arles, I guess Arles was on the plan. I thought I could do worse than stay here for 9
Certainly.
days.
Yeah, it's too bad about that, but this is really, really beautiful. You can tell. Okay, so here's the picture of you at the end of your trip.
Yeah, I definitely felt better.
Yeah, well, let's have a look. I think I put the two together. Okay.
Yep.
Now you have a tan, but there definitely is a new wisdom there. And I really just wanted to ask you about that, because your book really is about being a woman of a certain age and taking this trip with that kind of package in mind. So, and you wrote in right at the beginning of your book, you say, I hope this book will inspire women, especially those of a certain age, to trust themselves. There is still time.
There is.
Yeah.
There
So what
is.
did you learn about yourself and as being a woman of a certain age through this trip?
I learned that I'm resilient and that I still have the spunk I had when I was in my 20s. And somehow it was buried or subdued or pounded down. And perhaps I did have a little love interest in mon cher, but he didn't pan out. You can read about that in the book.
Oh, we don't want to give that away. Mon cher means my dear in French.
My dear.
Yeah, you never mention what his real name is, but you take us through how he plays out in the story, but he doesn't go with you. That's very important.
He does not come. And afterwards, when he looked at the picture that you see on the left, he said, "You've changed. You have, I don't know what it is," he said, "but you've changed." And I thought, I'm wise. I know that I can, well, our family has a motto, and the motto pretty much runs, I don't know, but I can figure it out. And every one of my children says that. And I'm beginning to wonder, did I learn it from my children, or did they learn it from me, or do we keep each other going? Right. But there were so many things I had to learn, how to adapt when things didn't go well. So I think that's what I gained in just a refreshed spirit, and thinking life is still fun. It can still be fun if you choose. I say joie de vivre has no expiration date, and I mean that.
Oh, I like that very much.
And I've met so many women in their 80s and 90s who still have that wonderful sense of life is good. No matter what happens, life is good.
Well, you do talk about one woman in Paris, an 80-year-old, who she's sitting somewhere, walking somewhere, and you felt like she just had the grace and elegance of somebody so much younger, and she believed it. You could tell, right? I've noticed that in France too. I think it's something we could all learn I just wanted to point out to people that you do have a website by your name, gailschilling.com, if people want to go and have a look at it. But let's
Yes.
come back out here, okay, and talk about, I'm going to bring in Robin, who's right there now. Let's see if I can just put the speaker on. So Robin is on the call, everybody, because she did Gail's audiobook. So not everybody gets an audiobook done of their book. They're lucky if they get the book and published and everything, right, Gail?
Right.
Right, which you did. And it's a
Right.
wonderful book, really wonderful book. But Robin actually approached Gail. So Robin, I'm going to bring you in. She's in Montreal. So tell us about, because this is the kind of work you do. How did you meet Gail? And then why did you think that this book would make a particularly good audio version?
Well, first, I'm actually in Toronto, but I am
Oh,
from
okay.
Montreal.
Okay.
So I grew up speaking both French and English.
Perfect.
And I found out about Gail through your blog. And I was introduced to your blog by my sister-in-law in 2018. I had just come back from Paris, and I'm lucky enough to have been there many times. My husband has family there. And so we had just come back from our trip, and I was just raving about Paris again. And my sister-in-law said, well, you would love Diana's blog. So I went to look at your blog, and I had been to a meeting in Toronto a few years ago where I saw you speak. So I knew of you, and I read your blog, and I loved it. And on that particular blog, I saw Gail's book. And so I read about it, and I thought, oh, that sounds charming. And I happened to be in that age group, and I happen to love France. And I speak French, and I speak, I also, as a narrator, I have the French accent that I can bring. And Gail's book is full of wonderful, colorful characters. And so I knew that I could bring that to life. And so I had to track Gail down, though. She wasn't easy to find. And so I did some digging. I'm a part-time sleuth.
Yeah, me
in my
too.
narration.
That's how I found her. Yeah.
Right. And so I found her, and I sent her a message, and I said, have you ever thought of doing an audiobook of your book? It's charming, and I think it would really come to life. And she said, wow, I'm intrigued. How does that work? And so we started a dialogue back and forth, and we made an agreement, and away we went.
And was it a particularly good book to do as a woman's voice or woman? Because it is a beautifully written book for very introspective, right, and reflective. Yeah.
It was great fun. It was great fun to narrate. I mean, I narrate all kinds of books, but this one really touched me personally, partly because I love France so much, and I know the characters so well. I mean, they just jumped off the page at me. So I intrinsically had a really good feel for how to narrate them. The one that I didn't get right when I gave Gail a sample was Vivian, who is in Boston, and she's a real character, and I didn't get that quite right. And so Gail came back to me and said, yeah, that's not quite it. And she gave me a video of Eleanor Roosevelt and said, this is really much closer to the voice that I'm looking for.
Wow.
And then I got it, and I sent her back a sample, and she said, that's it. That's it.
And just for people who don't know, Vivian was who in the book?
Well, Gail, maybe you want to tell who Vivian is.
Oh, Vivian was somebody that I met at a boarding house in Cambridge when I was in my 20s. And when I was at the professor's place, I started to channel her and remember her and how to do things that are difficult. She really taught me how to plow through. I don't know, but I'll figure it out. She was phenomenal in that. And actually, when Robin did the sample, she did it so well it brought tears to my eyes. I said I
can imagine. I think it's amazing to do that. Well, and I'm so glad you've actually connected through my blog. I'm absolutely honored that happened. So that's wonderful.
It all comes full circle.
It does, doesn't it? It's all, women doing extraordinary things. I think this is great. So we're going to do a couple of giveaways now, and I want you both to be, Gail, I'm going to start with you, and I want everybody that's listening to pay attention. So what I want you to do, Gail, think of one of the locations that you went on your trip, the name of one that you would like to maybe go back again to. Okay.
Okay.
And then I'm going to ask everybody in the chat if you're able to do that. Have you got it, Gail, the one you're thinking of?
I do.
Okay. in the chat, I want the first person, well, everybody write down where they would think that Gail's thinking. Okay, so Zach, and go slowly because I have to read them all. Okay, I'll let everybody get in there. And I'm saving the chat just in case I can't do it fast enough here. Okay, we're getting lots. Collier, Perpignan, Mont Saint-Michel, Lille, Amboise. Okay, it looks like we've got the end of it. All right, Gail, which one was it?
Well, it was Paris, but my second choice would be Mont Saint-Michel.
Okay, so we do. So that's, my goodness, that's Shardy Stevenson, who happens to be, and this is very serious. I mean, there's a lot of people on this call today. She's my very closest friend in the whole world. And it's her birthday today.
Oh,
So Shardy, you get the book. Isn't that great? You know, I'm not going to lend you mine. I'm keeping mine. Okay. All right. So yes, and happy birthday to Shardy. People are coming. So that's fantastic. Now, Robin, I'm going to give away one of the audiobooks too. And I'm going to buy one for myself as well, because I really would like to hear it as an audiobook. But let's do the same with you. If there's a place that she went that you know of and you keep it in your head, have you got an idea?
I sure do.
Okay. All right. So everybody, thanks, Sherry. Okay. Hold on. Okay. But we started. I guess we have started. Susan Z has started. Okay. Keep going, guys. What do you think Robin is thinking? I have to remember Susan Z started this one. I will wait for you all to get in there. Okay. Lots. We got Chartres, Paris, Collier, Lille, Césac, Saint-Malo. Everybody's in there. Amboise, Collier. Yeah. Okay. Whoops. I got to wait. I want to make sure everybody gets in there. Okay. All right. Robin, what did you think?
It's Collioure because it's the one place that I've never been. And Gail inspired me to go.
All right. So who was the first person? I have to go back up here to have a look, to put that after Susan Z. And just bear with me here. Okay. Susan Z was the first person to do it. She said Collier. And believe me, I can understand that. I am going there for sure. So both of those winners, congratulations. And I will be contacting you both. Shardy, I know how to get in touch with, but Susan, I'll have your email and I'll find out where you live and send you this audiobook. That's fantastic. Well, listen, I wish we had more time. It just goes so quickly. But Gail, I just wanted to ask you, just, sort of as a parting thing, if you had any advice for women our age going off on a trip somewhere, what would be that piece of advice that you would give them, in addition to saying, look, you can do this? Yeah, what would you do? Because I did have somebody who emailed me earlier today and said, did she feel safe and everything? There's a little bit of that fear factor, and you had it too. In the book, you write a lot about like, oh my God, am I doing this? Or right?
I was very apprehensive, but I would say,
what would you say to people?
Do it. Each thing that you do, what does Eleanor Roosevelt said? Do the thing you fear, and that doesn't mean to go walking around at night.
Right? Don't.
But
do
it means
stupid. No.
Trust yourself. And that's what I quote Stacey Allison, who was the first American woman to summit Mount Everest. And she said, trust yourself or nobody else will. Mm-hmm. And just trust yourself that you can do this, and just nibble off small pieces. You don't have to, go to Moscow tomorrow, but you might just want to go to a different town or try something new. And I think for any of us, just getting out after COVID is going to take a little extra nerve. So just trust yourself and know that you will do the right thing. Trust yourself.
Yeah, and thanks for letting us dream today too. I know, because we're all so ready to get out there. All right, so I really want to thank you, Robin, for being here today, and also, of course, Gail. You and I are now really good friends. So let me just thank you for those of you, for instance, who would like to read Gail's book and didn't win today. You can go to my website though, and A Woman of a Certain Age in Paris, really easy to find. And under book club, you will find Gail's book. Okay, it's right at the top of the page today. And then just to sort of preview next month, I want to ask you all to join me in May, where I'm going to be interviewing the young woman who purchased Julia Child's cottage in
Mm.
Provence and lives there now. And she also, that's where Julia wrote or co-wrote Mastering the Art of French Cooking, which really brought French cooking to North America. So the new owner is a lovely young woman, and she's kept the cottage pretty much the way that Julia had it. So we're going to be doing a lot with her, and you can already sign up for that by going to my website again, Woman of a Certain Age, and clicking on what's called the Virtual Adventures Club, and you will find it again. So everybody, once again, thank you. Stay safe. I hope you're all getting your shots. Have a lovely month, and we'll see you soon. Okay? À la prochaine, mes amis.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Bye for now.
Au revoir.
Au
Merci
revoir.
Au revoir.
bien. Au revoir.